Okay, so the first thing that we'll work with, so you can choose the ball. If you have really dense feet, you don't have a lot of sensitivity in your feet, go with this harder lacrosse ball. If you have more sensitive feet, then you're going to go with the tennis ball. And we're going to start by just working through the bottom of the foot. So I'm going to go across the forefoot. I'm going to go into the plantar fascia right here. And I'm going to do just a very simple roll. We can get more detailed into this, but I'm going to keep the ball underneath me so that my weight can settle down into the ball, and I'm going to visit the different areas of my foot. So from the heel into the forefoot, not really going into my toes. I can kind of get into my toes a little bit. I'm not going to address the toes in this video, but know that there's much more that we can work with in this posterior chain. So I'm just letting my weight sink down. I'm saying hello to the foot first, so I'm starting with a light roll, and then I'm going to apply more pressure as I go through. And as I go through, I'm going to notice some different areas of the foot that seem a little sensitive. Okay, and then we all might be familiar with the plantar fascia from the forefoot, gathers into the heel and goes into the Achilles. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just wiggling back and forth, and I'm cross-frictioning, okay, that plantar fascia. And I'm never gonna really stay in the same track too often. I want to visit kind of different areas, different pathways. And then if I have a really sensitive area, then I can just kind of sink and press around it. This is part of the role model, which is Jill Miller's book. So she has a lot of different methods for this. So after I do that, I want to be very specific about this, because when I teach this in class, people miss this. You have a prominence here where your big toe, okay, meets your foot, and a prominence where your pinky toe meets your foot. And I'm going to place this tennis ball between those two prominences, okay, so those two prominent points. I want to make sure that my weight's underneath me. And the other thing that I'm going to watch is that I'm not kicking my butt back, shooting my rib cage forward, and taking my pelvis, okay, into this big anterior tilt. So I want to get neutral in the pelvis. So I'm going to take the top of the sacrum, sink it down towards the tailbone reaching towards the earth. I'm going to zip up pubic bone to my navel center and get more neutral in the pelvis. And again, let that weight settle into that back body. Okay, so once I'm here, then I'm going to roll back and forth from the big toe to the pinky toe. And I'm just letting my foot kind of melt over the ball. Okay, and then going from side to side. So I'm going to get a little motion that way. And then I'm going to come back to the center. And then I'm going to release that, and I would do the other side. I'm only going to do one side today. So after I do the ball and spend, a good bit of time, maybe 5 minutes, then I'm going to pick up this half foam roller right here. So it's a foam roller that's been cut in half. If you don't have that, then feel free to take a dense blanket, roll that up, do a tight roll. You could also do a towel. But I find that this is like a great tool for a couple of things and for calf stretching as well. So I'm going to move up into the calf. Again, another thing that I notice when people start to get into this is that their heel doesn't go all the way down to the floor. So make sure your heel's sinking down. The other thing that I notice is that I'm going to compensate for this tightness down here by changing the position of my pelvis and my rib cage, okay? And that's going to shift the weight off so that I'm not feeling that calf stretch as much. But if I do the same thing, again, bring the pelvis into neutral, then I might find I got a lot of tightness down here, and I might not be feeling it back here. I might feel it here or intensely around the ankle joint. So what I want to do, instead of taking my posture out of alignment, is I want to step back a little bit and then let everything sink down and settle. okay? And when I'm doing this stretch, I'm going to go into a more parallel position, so that prominence on the pinky toe side is gonna line up with kind of like the jut of my outer ankle. So these obviously are not anatomical terms, I'm just trying to make it understandable. So I wanted to also show you one more shift that happens, and that is a shift like this, okay? So anytime I'm taking this center of gravity and I'm shifting it some way, I'm compensating for that tightness down there. So that's why we want to try to maintain that neutral pelvis, okay? Now I can work different angles with this stretch. You're gonna find this in Katie Bowman's book, the one that I just showed you. So I can work with turning the foot in. I can work with turning the foot out. I can keep moving that heel around to get different angles, okay? All the while, I'm gonna keep that neutral pelvis, okay? And then I'm gonna stand, I'm gonna breathe, okay? Spend a good bit of time. So if you've got a really tight spot, try to go 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes before you go into that next spot. All right, so after that, what might be a good thing to do is to grab some sort of foam roller. So if you have this long one, I think this is a good entry point, okay? This is good entry level rolling right here. If you need something a little bit more dense, then you can get something like this right here. Everywhere sells it. The freaking dollar store sells these, okay? You can get them anywhere. So you can start by sitting on the roller. You could do one at a time. So I'm gonna move it off to the right side, right leg, since I'm working right leg. Support myself with my left leg, take my hands behind here, and all I'm doing is just warming up those tissues. Another thing that might be helpful before you start the sequence is to actually warm up. So go on a brisk walk, maybe do some calf raises, work with the feet, butt kickers, maybe some Frankensteins, and you want to get that circulation going to the tissues before you start to work with them. Because remember that we're working with the health and the balance of the tissue, not necessarily just the flexibility. Okay, so after you roll that back and forth and into the hamstrings, you can go down into the calves as well. I don't know, calf rolling is definitely an art in itself. So we've gotten into the hamstrings. I'm gonna pick up blocks. If you don't have blocks, get something that looks like them, okay, if you need them. Some people don't need the blocks at all. Okay, and we're gonna do a little dynamic stretching right here. So hinging at the hips, I'm gonna keep the spine long, okay? The weight is in the heels. The knees are soft, okay? So not necessarily bent, but not locked out either, okay? And then again, I'm drawing that pubic bone to the belly button. So from here, I'm gonna actually lean back just a little bit so that I can start to feel some extension. Okay, some things you can play with, lifting up the right foot, lifting up the left foot while you keep the heel down. Okay, so we could do that just on the right side without shifting our weight. Okay, and one of my favorite things to do for the posterior, and it's a dynamic stretch, the contraindication, any herniation in your lower back, you're not gonna do this, okay? If you have herniation, known herniation in your low back, particularly L4, L5, then you are gonna stay right here, breathe and stretch, okay? So this is an inhale, you extend, the feet are down, the hips are back, okay? And then you're gonna exhale, pull up the bottoms of the feet, draw the belly up, bring the forehead towards the tailbone, and make a big cat back. When you inhale, you come forward onto the ball of the foot, extend the spine, and then when you exhale, you rock back, pull the toes up, again, draw the belly up, forehead towards the tailbone. And I'm gonna go back and forth, so we inhale, and then exhale. Inhale, and then exhale.
exhale through your mouth. Inhale. Exhale. And we'll just do it one more time. And then exhale. And then you inhale, extend your spine, bend your knees. Walk your hands up your knees, bring your hips underneath you and stand up. Okay, so after you do that dynamic hamstring stretch, we'll move that off to the side. And then you can do either a wide founder. That move comes from foundation training, Dr. Eric Goodman, I believe. Or you can do what's sometimes referred to as the countertop stretch. So I'll show you that first. Any countertop, you can put your hands against the wall, kitchen table, but you're gonna bring your hands kind of that outer shoulder distance apart. You want your hip, so the center of your hip, find your front of your hip bone, go the center of your hip, center of your knee, center of your ankle. Okay, you're gonna line that up on both sides. So we're here, we have our hands on top. You're gonna walk back. Align your head in between your biceps, just to start off with. Feel your rib cage reaching away from your hips and your pelvis, and then reach your sit bones and your tailbone back. Think about your spine being one long line. Okay, and that's called axial extension. Walk your feet forward just a little bit, okay, and really pull the hamstrings back, pull the sit bones back, reach the crown forward. Maintain space between your ears and your shoulders. Keep breathing. Okay, and think about the bottom, the base of the rib cage, the top of the hips, pulling away from one another, opposite directions. Okay, you could feel this in the calves, the back of the knees, the hamstrings, the low back, the spine. You could feel it in the shoulders. Just depends on where your tightness is. Try not to let your head drop down. Try not to collapse in your shoulders. Okay, try not to arch your back too much. So we're just going for that nice long line. Again, bend your knees, use your legs to come up. Okay, so that's one stretch that you can do. Another really good one is the wide founder. I hope I do this justice. So you're gonna start with your feet about 2 feet apart. I'm gonna go sideways so you can see this. So your feet are about 2 feet apart, and you're gonna bend your knees. And when you bend your knees, you're gonna bring your hips back. This is called hip hinging. You want to try to keep the knees so that they're somewhat underneath the ankles. You're going to feel the weight in the heels. So remember how I talked about that line of gravity? Okay, I drop that book, it's going to drop straight down. So we want our line of gravity to be in that posterior chain down through the center of the heels. Forefoot down, toes spread out wide. Already you're going to feel some tightening, some tensioning, okay, in the back side. Okay, now as I hip hinge, and I'm bending my knees, keeping the knees over the ankles. I'm gonna bring the arms back and I'm gonna open the chest, okay? Now from here, again, you're gonna feel like the rib cage is lifting up off of the hips. So the hips are pushing down, the feet are pulling in a little bit, the knees are bent. The rib cage is lifting, the chest is opening, okay? Now continue to breathe. So you wanna inhale and exhale. We're gonna take the fingers together and I'm gonna start to play tug of war between the fingers and between the sitting bones back here, okay? And I'm gonna keep reaching, keep extending, so that there starts to be some tension here, okay, in the low back, possibly in the glutes, in the hamstrings, and then I can continue all the way down, okay, into a hip hinge, deep hip hinge, all the way down into a forward fold. And I can keep coming back, keep the knees bent, keeping the knees over the ankles. Okay, and then I can bring myself back up here, okay, and then again, just reach. Keep reaching, feel that tension in the back body. Pull the hips forward, bring the arms down. Okay, good breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. The final thing you can do comes from yoga and also from a method called Aldoa, which we can work with another time. And it's to wrap all of this up with an inversion. So scoot your booty up against the wall. Okay. And if your hamstrings are really tight, you're not going to be able to get your hips up against the wall. You're going to have to push away a little bit, separate the legs and bend the knees. In Aldoa, which is a method found by a French gentleman named Guy Voyer, This is called TV watching pose. In yoga, this is called Viparita Karani, which is legs up on the wall pose. So what we have going on is just a relaxation of the toes, relaxation of the tissues of the calves, knees, all the way down through the thighs, into the low back and sacrum. Hang out here, I'd say 5 minutes minimum. Don't go any less than that. And this is a routine that you go through several times a week. To get out of this, you're gonna bend your knees. So after 5 minutes, you've binge watched a little bit of Netflix, maybe you've scrolled around on IG, whatever your jam is. You're gonna roll over and then come all the way up. So this whole routine, in combination of watching your nutrition and your hydration, do it several times a week. You are not gonna get results by just doing this video one time or doing this routine one time. You're not gonna get results by doing it for a couple weeks and then stopping. So it takes a long time for the body to remodel, nervous system wise and connective tissue wise. So you have to put in the time to get the results. I will take this video, and in the description I'll write out the routine. So if you want to skip all of my jabbering, then you can just go straight to that and do that. I hope that you find this helpful. Again, it's not tried or true. It's just some tips that I've found to be helpful, and I hope it helps you get out of pain.